The rain hammered against the glass walls of the bus stop like angry fists, each drop a reminder of how cold and alone Anita Williams felt in this moment. Her scrubs were still damp from the 12-hour shift at St. Mary's Hospital, and her feet ached so badly she could barely feel her toes anymore. The digital clock on her phone read 11:47 p.m., but the last bus had already come and gone 2 hours ago. She had missed it while trying to save a patient who didn't make it. Anita pressed her back against the hard plastic bench and closed her eyes, fighting back tears that had been building all day. This was rock bottom. She had exactly $7 in her wallet, her rent was 3 weeks overdue, and her landlord had already slipped an eviction notice under her door. The electricity in her tiny apartment had been cut off yesterday, which meant no heat, no light, and no way to cook the single can of beans sitting in her empty kitchen cabinet. Her phone buzzed with another text from her sister Denise. "Girl, you can't keep doing this to yourself. Just come stay with us." But Anita knew Denise was already struggling to feed her 3 kids on a grocery store clerk's salary. She wouldn't be another burden on her family, not when they had already sacrificed so much to help her through nursing school. The irony wasn't lost on her that she spent her days taking care of others while she couldn't even take care of herself. Earlier that evening, she had held the hand of a dying man who had no family, whispering prayers her grandmother had taught her until he took his last breath. She had comforted a mother whose child was fighting for life in the ICU. She had been strong for everyone else, but now, alone in this bus stop with nowhere to go, she felt like she was drowning. A sleek black car pulled up to the red light across the street, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Through the rain-streaked window, Anita could see the warm glow inside, probably heated leather seats and soft music. She wondered what it would feel like to have that kind of security, to never worry about whether you'd have a roof over your head or food in your stomach. The light turned green and the car disappeared into the night, leaving her alone again with the sound of rain and her own racing thoughts. She pulled her thin cardigan tighter around her shoulders and tried to ignore the gnawing hunger in her stomach. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, and that had been just a piece of toast she'd grabbed from the hospital cafeteria. Anita thought about her grandmother, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 8. Grandma Rose used to say, "Baby, the Lord don't give you more than you can handle, but sometimes He sure does test your faith." Right now, Anita felt like she was failing that test miserably. She opened her eyes and stared at the empty street, wondering if she should just start walking. It was 15 miles to her apartment, but at least moving might keep her warm. The thought of facing that dark, cold space made her stomach turn, though. At least here in the bus stop there were lights and the illusion of safety. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her supervisor at the hospital. "Anita, I know you're struggling, but you've been late 3 times this week. I'm going to have to write you up if it happens again." She stared at the message, feeling the walls closing in around her. How could she explain that she was late because she was walking to work? That she couldn't afford gas for her car because she'd had to choose between fuel and keeping her phone service active? The rain was getting heavier now and some of it was starting to blow into the bus stop. Anita scooted to the far corner of the bench, trying to stay dry, but her scrubs were already soaked through. She shivered and wrapped her arms around herself, closing her eyes again. Maybe she should call Denise. Maybe pride was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. But even as she thought it, she knew she couldn't do it. Denise had her own problems, her own struggles. The last thing she needed was her big sister showing up at her door like a failure. A car door slammed somewhere in the distance, and Anita's eyes flew open. A figure was walking toward the bus stop, and for a moment, fear shot through her. It was almost midnight, and she was alone and vulnerable. But as the person got closer, she realized it was just an older woman heading home from work, probably facing her own set of struggles. Anita closed her eyes again and tried to imagine a different life. One where she didn't have to choose between rent and groceries, where she could focus on being the best nurse she could be without worrying about whether she'd have a place to sleep. One where she could help her sister instead of being a burden. One where she could honor her grandmother's memory by being strong and successful. But tonight, in this cold, wet bus stop, that life felt impossible. Tonight, she was just a tired, hungry woman with nowhere to go and no idea how she was going to make it through another day. The black Mercedes pulled up to the curb so quietly that Anita didn't notice it at first. She had finally dozed off, her head resting against the cold glass of the bus stop, when the soft hum of the engine woke her. Through sleepy eyes, she saw a tall man in an expensive suit getting out of the driver's seat. He was African American, probably in his 40s, with kind eyes and graying temples that gave him a distinguished look. "Excuse me," he said gently, his voice carrying a slight southern accent that reminded her of home. "Are you all right?" Anita sat up quickly, embarrassed to be caught sleeping in public. She smoothed down her wrinkled scrubs and tried to look like she had everything under control. "I'm fine, thank you. Just waiting for the next bus." The man looked at his expensive watch and frowned. "Ma'am, the buses stopped running 2 hours ago. The next one won't come until 6 in the morning." Heat rushed to Anita's cheeks. Of course he knew that. She probably looked exactly like what she was, a desperate woman with no options left. "I know," she said quietly. "I'm just taking a break." He studied her face for a moment, and she saw something shift in his expression. It wasn't pity exactly, but recognition. Like he understood something about her situation that she hadn't said out loud. "My name is James," he said, extending his hand. "James Morrison. I was just driving by and saw you sitting here in the rain. It's not safe for anyone to be out here alone this late." Anita hesitated before shaking his hand. "Anita Williams. And I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine." "Are you a nurse?" he asked, nodding toward her scrubs. "Yes, at St. Mary's Hospital." James smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "My mother was a nurse for 30 years. She used to come home looking exactly like you do right now, tired, but proud of the work she'd done." Something about the way he said it made Anita's guard drop slightly. "It's been a long day," she admitted. "I imagine it has been. Look, I know you don't know me, but I can't drive away and leave you here. Can I offer you a ride home? Or maybe to a hotel for the night?" Anita's first instinct was to say no. She'd been taught never to accept help from strangers, especially men she didn't know. But something about James felt different. Maybe it was the way he kept a respectful distance, or the genuine concern in his eyes. Or maybe she was just too tired to keep pretending she didn't need help. "I don't have money for a hotel," she said, the words coming out before she could stop them. "That's not what I'm asking," James said gently. "I'm asking if you'd let me help you. No strings attached, no expectations. Just one person helping another." Anita looked at him for a long moment, trying to read his face. She'd learned to be a good judge of character working in the hospital, dealing with patients and families from all walks of life. James didn't set off any alarm bells. If anything, he reminded her of her grandfather, the same quiet strength, the same way of making you feel safe just by being there. "Why would you help someone you don't even know?" she asked. James was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was softer. "Because 25 years ago I was sleeping in a bus stop too. I was young, broke, and convinced the world was against me. A woman named Mrs. Henderson saw me there and changed my life. She didn't just give me a place to sleep, she gave me hope." Anita felt tears prick her eyes. "What happened to her?" "She passed away 5 years ago. But before she died, she made me promise to pay it forward. She said kindness was the only thing that multiplied when you gave it away." The rain was coming down harder now, and Anita was shivering despite her efforts to stay warm. James noticed and took off his suit jacket, holding it out to her. "Please," he said. "You're going to catch pneumonia sitting out here." This time Anita didn't argue. She accepted the jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. It smelled like expensive cologne and fabric softener, but underneath that it smelled like safety. "There's a decent hotel about 10 minutes from here," James said. "Clean, safe, and the night manager is a friend of mine. I can get you a room for the night, and tomorrow you can figure out your next steps." "I can't pay you back," Anita said, hating how small her voice sounded. "I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to let me help, the same way Mrs. Henderson helped me." Anita thought about her options. She could stay here all night, cold and wet and vulnerable. She could swallow her pride and call Denise, dragging her sister into her problems. Or she could accept help from this stranger who seemed to understand exactly what she was going through. "Okay," she said finally. "But just for tonight. Tomorrow I'll figure something else out." James smiled again, and this time Anita found herself smiling back. "That's all I'm asking. One night at a time." As they walked toward his car, Anita felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something better. Maybe her grandmother had been right about the Lord not giving you more than you could handle. She slid into the passenger seat of the Mercedes, feeling the heated leather warm her cold body. James started the engine and pulled away from the curb, and for the first time in weeks, Anita felt like she was moving toward something instead of running away from it. The hotel room was simple but clean, with a comfortable bed and a bathroom that had hot water. Anita stood under the shower for 20 minutes, letting the warm water wash away the stress and exhaustion of the day. When she came out, she found that James had left a bag of clothes by the door: a simple sweater, jeans, and undergarments that were exactly her size. There was also a note: I asked the hotel shop to put together some basics for you. Get some rest. I'll check on you tomorrow. James. Anita held the note in her hands, reading it 3 times. When was the last time someone had taken care of her like this? When was the last time someone had seen her need and responded with kindness instead of judgment? She slept better that night than she had in months. When she woke up, sunlight was streaming through the hotel room windows, and for a moment she forgot where she was. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back, and she felt a mixture of gratitude and anxiety. What happened now? There was a soft knock on the door, and when she opened it, James was standing there with coffee and breakfast from the hotel restaurant. He was dressed more casually today in khakis and a polo shirt, but he still carried himself with the same quiet confidence. "Good morning," he said. "I hope you slept well." "I did, thank you. But you don't have to keep doing this. You've already done more than enough." James smiled. "May I come in? I'd like to talk to you about something." Anita stepped aside, and James set the breakfast on the small table by the window. The smell of bacon and eggs made her stomach growl, reminding her that she hadn't eaten a real meal in days. "Eat first," he said, noticing her expression. "We can talk after." The food was delicious, and Anita found herself eating faster than she meant to. James pretended not to notice, sipping his coffee and looking out the window. When she finished, he leaned forward in his chair. "I want to offer you something," he said. "But I need you to hear me out completely before you say no." Anita nodded, though she was already preparing to refuse whatever he was about to suggest. "I run a company called Morrison Healthcare Solutions. We partner with hospitals to improve patient care and reduce costs. I'm looking for a director of nursing operations, someone who understands both the clinical side and the human side of healthcare." Anita's eyes widened. "Mr. Morrison, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm not qualified for that kind of position. I'm just a floor nurse." "You're not just anything," James said firmly. "Last night, even exhausted and at your lowest point, you carried yourself with dignity. You were sleeping in a bus stop, but you weren't bitter or angry. You were grateful for help, but you weren't looking for a handout. Those are the qualities I need in someone who's going to help me build something meaningful. But I don't have the experience." "Experience can be taught. Character can't." James pulled out a business card and placed it on the table. "The position comes with a salary of $85,000 a year, full benefits, and a signing bonus that would cover your rent for the next 6 months. But more importantly, it comes with the opportunity to make a real difference in people's lives." Anita stared at the card, her mind racing. It felt too good to be true, like a dream that she'd wake up from any moment. "Why me?" she asked. "You could hire someone with years of management experience. Because I need someone who remembers what it's like to struggle. Someone who understands that behind every patient is a real person with real problems. Someone who won't forget where they came from." Tears were streaming down Anita's face now, and she didn't try to hide them. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it. Take the weekend, and if you're interested, come to my office on Monday morning. We'll talk more about the position and I'll introduce you to my team." James stood up and headed toward the door, then turned back. "Anita, I want you to know that this isn't charity. I'm not offering you this job because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because I think you're exactly what my company needs. The fact that you're struggling financially doesn't change the fact that you're talented and compassionate and strong." After he left, Anita sat in the hotel room for a long time, holding the business card and thinking about everything that had happened. 24 hours ago she had been at the lowest point of her life. Now she was being offered an opportunity that could change everything. She thought about her grandmother, who had always told her that God worked in mysterious ways. Maybe this was one of those times. Maybe James Morrison was the answer to prayers she'd been too proud to say out loud. She picked up her phone and called Denise. "Girl, where have you been?" her sister said. "I've been worried sick about you." "I'm okay, Denise. Actually, I'm more than okay. I think my luck might be changing." "What do you mean?" Anita told her sister everything about sleeping in the bus stop, about meeting James, about the job offer. When she finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. "Anita," Denise said finally, "are you sure this is real? It sounds too good to be true." "I know it does. But I looked him up online. James Morrison is the real deal. His company has contracts with hospitals all over the country. He's been featured in business magazines, and everything he told me about his background checks out." "So what are you going to do?" Anita looked at the business card again, then at her reflection in the hotel mirror. She saw a woman who had been knocked down but wasn't broken. A woman who had been given a second chance and was brave enough to take it. I'm going to take the job, she said. I'm going to change my life. Monday morning came faster than Anita expected. She stood outside the Morrison Healthcare Solutions building, a gleaming glass tower in downtown Atlanta, wearing the outfit James had provided along with a blazer she'd bought with her last $20. Her hands were shaking slightly as she pushed through the revolving door. The lobby was impressive marble floors, modern artwork, and a reception desk that looked like it belonged in a five-star hotel. Anita gave her name to the receptionist, who smiled warmly and directed her to the elevator. Mr. Morrison is expecting you on the 15th floor, she said. The elevator ride felt like it took forever. Anita used the time to practice her breathing and remind herself that she deserved to be here. James had seen something in her that she was just beginning to see in herself. The 15th floor was bustling with activity. People in business suits moved purposefully through the halls, and Anita could hear the sound of phones ringing and keyboards clicking. A young woman approached her as soon as the elevator doors opened. Ms. Williams? I'm Sarah, Mr. Morrison's assistant. He's waiting for you in his office. James's office was nothing like what Anita had expected. Instead of an intimidating executive suite, it was warm and inviting, with family photos on the desk and artwork that looked like it had been painted by children. James stood up when she entered, smiling broadly. Anita, I'm so glad you're here. How are you feeling? Nervous, she admitted. But excited. Good. Nervous means you care. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. I want to start by telling you more about what we do here. For the next hour, James walked her through the company's mission and vision. Morrison Healthcare Solutions worked with hospitals to improve patient outcomes while reducing costs. They focused on training, technology, and creating systems that put patients first. The thing is, James said, we can have all the technology and systems in the world, but if we don't have people who truly care about patients, none of it matters. That's where you come in. He pulled out a folder and handed it to her. This is your job description, salary information, and benefits package. But before we get into the details, I want you to meet some of the team. Over the next 2 hours, Anita met with department heads, project managers, and other staff members. Each person she spoke with was passionate about their work and genuinely excited about the possibility of her joining the team. By the time she returned to James's office, she felt like she was already part of something bigger than herself. So, James said, settling back in his chair, what do you think? I think I want to do this, Anita said, surprised by how confident she sounded. I want to help you build something that makes a real difference. James smiled and pulled out a contract. Then let's make it official. As Anita signed the papers, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. Less than a week ago, she had been sleeping in a bus stop, convinced that her life was falling apart. Now she was signing a contract that would change everything. There's one more thing, James said after she finished signing. I want you to know that this is just the beginning. I see leadership potential in you, Anita. With the right training and support, I believe you could run your own division someday. I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of responsibility. You're not, and that's okay. Nobody is ready for their next level of success until they step into it. But I'm going to be here to support you every step of the way. That afternoon, Anita called her landlord and paid her back rent in full. She called the electric company and had her power restored. She went grocery shopping for the first time in months, filling her cart with real food instead of just the cheapest options. But the most important call she made was to Denise. I got the job, she said as soon as her sister answered. Oh my God, Anita. Are you serious? Dead serious. I start tomorrow morning. I'm so proud of you, girl. You've been through so much and you never gave up. I almost did, Anita admitted. That night in the bus stop I was ready to quit. I felt like I was drowning and I couldn't see any way out. But you didn't quit. You held on and look what happened. That night, Anita lay in her own bed in her own apartment, listening to the hum of the air conditioning and thinking about how much her life had changed in just a few days. She thought about James and his willingness to take a chance on her. She thought about Mrs. Henderson, the woman who had helped him all those years ago, and how her kindness was still rippling through the world. She made a promise to herself that night. She would work harder than anyone expected, learn everything she could, and someday she would be in a position to help someone else the way James had helped her. 3 months later, Anita was settling into her new role better than anyone had expected. She had implemented new training programs for nursing staff, developed protocols that improved patient satisfaction scores, and built relationships with hospital administrators across the region. James called her into his office on a Friday afternoon, and she wondered if she had done something wrong. Instead, he handed her a letter. "This came for you today," he said, smiling mysteriously. The letter was from the Georgia Nurses Association, informing her that she had been nominated for the Rising Star Award for her innovative work in healthcare management. Anita read it twice, hardly believing what she was seeing. "James, did you?" "I didn't nominate you," he said. 3 different hospital administrators did. They said your programs have transformed their nursing departments. Anita felt tears in her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just keep being the amazing person you are. And remember, this is just the beginning." 2 years later, Anita stood in front of the mirror in her new office, adjusting the nameplate on her door, "Anita Williams, Vice President of Operations." She still couldn't quite believe it was real. The scared, desperate woman who had slept in a bus stop felt like a different person entirely. The company had grown significantly under her leadership. Her innovative approaches to healthcare management had been featured in industry publications, and hospitals across the Southeast were requesting her personally to help improve their operations. But success hadn't changed who she was at her core. She still remembered what it felt like to choose between rent and groceries, to feel invisible and forgotten. Those memories drove her to work harder and to never take her good fortune for granted. There was a knock on her door and Sarah poked her head in. "Ms. Williams? There's someone here to see you. She says it's about the scholarship program." Anita had established the Mrs. Henderson Scholarship Fund 6 months ago, offering financial assistance to nursing students who were struggling to make ends meet. It had been her way of paying forward the kindness that had changed her life. "Send her in," Anita said, expecting to see a young nursing student. Instead, a middle-aged woman entered her office. She was African American, probably in her 50s, with tired eyes and hands that showed the wear of hard work. She was wearing scrubs and carrying a worn purse. "Ms. Williams? My name is Patricia Johnson. I'm a nurse at Regional Medical Center. Please sit down. How can I help you?" Patricia sat on the edge of the chair as if she wasn't sure she belonged there. "I heard about your scholarship program. I wanted to ask, is it only for young people?" "Not at all. What's your situation?" Patricia's story came out in a rush. She had been working as a nurse for 15 years, but had never been able to afford to go back to school for her bachelor's degree. She was a single mother of 2 teenagers, and every dollar she earned went to rent, food, and keeping her kids in school. She had dreams of becoming a nurse practitioner, but the cost of school seemed impossible. "I've been saving for 3 years," Patricia said, her voice breaking slightly. "But every time I get close to having enough, something happens. My car breaks down, or one of my kids needs something for school, or my hours get cut. I'm 48 years old, and I'm starting to think it's too late for me to chase my dreams." Anita's heart ached as she listened. Patricia could have been her 2 years ago, talented, dedicated, but trapped by circumstances beyond her control. "Patricia, it's never too late to chase your dreams. And you're exactly the kind of person this scholarship was designed to help. But I'm not traditional college age. Neither was I when I got my big break. Someone saw potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself. I want to do the same for you." Anita opened her laptop and pulled up the scholarship application. The fund covers full tuition, books, and provides a monthly stipend for living expenses. You'd be able to cut back on your work hours to focus on school. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. But I have one condition." Patricia nodded eagerly. "Anything. When you become a nurse practitioner, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember what it felt like to have someone believe in you. And someday when you're successful, I want you to help someone else." "I promise," Patricia whispered. "I promise." As Patricia left, clutching the scholarship application and wiping tears from her face, Anita thought about the chain of kindness that had brought her to this moment. Mrs. Henderson had helped James, James had helped her, and now she was helping Patricia. Each act of kindness created ripples that would extend far beyond what any of them could imagine. That evening, Anita was working late when James knocked on her door. He had been promoted to CEO the previous year, but he still made time to mentor her and celebrate her successes. "I heard about Patricia Johnson," he said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "That was beautiful what you did for her. It felt like the right thing to do. Actually, it felt like the only thing to do." James smiled. "You know, when I first met you in that bus stop, I saw something special. But I had no idea you'd become this kind of leader. I'm not sure I knew either. I just knew I wanted to help people the way you helped me. That's exactly what makes you special. You haven't forgotten where you came from, but you're not defined by it either. You've taken your pain and turned it into purpose. Anita looked around her office at the awards on the wall, the photos of her team, the letters from grateful patients and families. 2 years ago, she had been convinced her life was over. Now she was living a life she couldn't have imagined. James, I've been thinking about expanding the scholarship program. Maybe we could partner with other companies, create a network of support for healthcare workers who want to advance their careers. I love that idea. In fact, I've been thinking about something similar. What if we created a foundation? The Mrs. Henderson Foundation for Healthcare Excellence. You would do that? We would do that. You've proven that investing in people is the best investment a company can make. I want to make sure we can help as many people as possible. 6 months later, the foundation was officially launched. The ceremony was held at the Marriott downtown with healthcare workers, business leaders, and community members filling the ballroom. Anita stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd, and felt overwhelmed by how far she had come. 3 years ago, she began, I was sleeping in a bus stop, convinced that my life was over. I was broke, exhausted, and had lost hope that things would ever get better. But sometimes, when we're at our lowest point, that's when the universe sends us exactly what we need. She found James in the audience and smiled. Someone once told me that kindness is the only thing that multiplies when you give it away. Tonight, we're not just launching a foundation, we're planting seeds of hope that will grow for generations to come. The crowd erupted in applause, and Anita felt tears of joy streaming down her face. She thought about her grandmother, who had always told her that God had a plan for her life. She thought about all the people who had helped her along the way, and all the people she would help in the future. As the evening wound down, Patricia Johnson approached her. Was dressed in a graduation cap and gown. She had just finished her nurse practitioner program and was starting her new job at a community health clinic. Ms. Williams, she said, I wanted to thank you again. And I wanted you to know that I've already started my own scholarship fund for single mothers in nursing school. The kindness you showed me is already multiplying. Anita hugged her tightly, feeling the completion of a circle that had started with Mrs. Henderson's kindness to a young James Morrison. Each act of compassion created new opportunities for others to rise, to grow, to become more than they ever thought possible. Later that night, Anita drove past the bus stop where James had found her. She pulled over and sat there for a few minutes, remembering the woman she had been and marveling at the woman she had become. The scared, desperate nurse was still part of her, but now she was also a leader, a mentor, and a force for positive change in the world. She thought about all the people who were sitting in their own metaphorical bus stops right now, convinced that their lives were over, that hope was just a luxury they couldn't afford. She made a promise to keep looking for those people, to keep extending her hand to help them up, to keep multiplying the kindness that had saved her life. The bus stop was empty now, but Anita knew that somewhere in the city someone was struggling, someone was afraid, someone was about to give up. And she knew that tomorrow she would wake up and continue the work of creating a world where no one had to face their darkest moments alone. As she drove home to her beautiful apartment, to her successful career, to her life full of purpose and meaning, Anita whispered a prayer of gratitude to her grandmother, to Mrs. Henderson, and to James Morrison. And she made a promise to keep the circle of kindness growing, one person at a time, one act of compassion at a time, until the whole world was a little brighter than it had been before.